Okay, so let us start. So today's class is about this standard way of writing context-free grammar. So if you remember, in the last class we practiced designing context-free grammars for various languages, right, which we thought as context-free languages. Now in this class what we're gonna do, we're gonna try to write our language, the context-free grammar in a standard form, and it is called Chomsky normal form. So the short form is CNF and it's called Chomsky normal form. Why we are talking about standard way of writing context-free grammars? There are various reasons for it. First of all, to understand some basic theoretical understanding behind parse trees and a special type of parse trees. So usually when you take any context-free grammar and you try to find a parse tree for a given string, which is in one sense trying to test whether the string belongs to the language or not, the parse tree might be having several means the internal nodes might be having different number of children at different level and different possibilities are there. But to restrict it and bring it to a standard way of writing as a binary tree or something like that, which is more understandable, we have already developed theories for understanding binary trees and all that. We developed this standard form called Chomsky normal form, where the parse tree is always restricted to be a binary tree. Now to do that, we say that in the Chomsky normal form there are only two standard ways of writing a production. Either a production looks like this or it looks like this. Now what do I mean by these two things? So the first one says that the production is comprising of the body, right? For any production in the context-free grammar, once you convert it into Chomsky normal form, you write it in Chomsky normal form, either it contains two variables in the body or it contains just one terminal. So the body cannot contain more than two variables or less than two variables, and that too only variables. So body can contain only variables, that too only two in number, or it can contain just one terminal. So you might be thinking that really is it possible, because when we wrote the context-free grammars it was very complex many a times, so many things here and there. But the answer is yes, it can be written, and there is a step-by-step way of doing it, right? So there are three main steps involved in converting any context-free grammar into Chomsky normal form. But before really going to that, I said three major pre-processing steps. So the steps that are required is called elimination of useless symbols, because we don't need it, right? So now we will define what is a useless symbol. The second part is elimination of Upsilon productions, and last but not the least is elimination of unit production. But these three steps that we are saying is the pre-processing step, right? Now once we are done with this pre-processing, then we might have to just few more steps to get the Chomsky normal form of any grammar. So let us first understand each of these processing steps, how it is done, and then finally we will learn, given any context free grammar, how can we convert into its Chomsky normal form. So the first one is eliminating useless symbols. So in context free grammars there can be two different types of useless symbols. So before saying what is a useless symbol, let us define what is a useful symbol, right? So let us first decide what is a useful symbol, and if a symbol is not useful, certainly it is useless, right? So a symbol X, when I say a symbol X, it can be part of basically V union T, right? So when I say a symbol X, it can be part of V union T. Now a symbol X is useful if it can be written like this. So let me just write this expression. Okay. Now if you break this whole thing to define a symbol X is useful, it says that the first part says that it should be a reachable symbol from the start symbol, right? So using start symbol, there should be some derivation where X appears. So this usefulness is called reachability from the start symbol. So it should be reachable from the start symbol. Next part if you take, so alpha x beta deriving into a W, which is a terminal string. So here we say W is actually from T star. So this, what does it infer? It is inferring that X can be derived into some W dash, where W dash is also part of T star, right? Because if alpha x beta overall string is able to derive a terminal string, certainly X is a substring of that, it's a symbol, so it is able to derive a smaller substring of terminals. So what does it mean? That it is a generating symbol. That means it can generate some terminal string from it. Because if any symbol cannot generate any terminal string, what is the problem with that? We will never use it for any derivation, right? Because at the end of the day, all these symbols are helping to derive some terminal string. So if there is any symbol which is not generating any terminal string after 1 or 0 or more steps, that symbol is useless to us. And if any symbol is not reachable from the start symbol, again that will never come in derivation of any string in that language. So therefore again, just like we had this unreachable states from the DFA. So from any state, if you cannot, if I have to talk about the DFAs, if from any state you can never reach to the final state, that state is useless to you, right? Because you will never from that state will ever take any string to come to any of the final states. And similarly, if it is also useless if you are not able to reach to that state from the start state. So in the same way, we are defining that a symbol is useful if and only if you can reach to that symbol in some derivation from the start symbol, and it can generate some terminal string. So there are two things. two properties it must hold: reachable from the start symbol, and it should be able to generate some terminal string, right? So reachable and generating, these are two properties a symbol should hold to be useful. So if a symbol is not useful, or in other words it is useless, that means either it is a non-generating symbol or it is not reachable from the start state. Sorry. Okay, so let us do one by one and identify how can we find all the generating symbols, and then we should try to understand how we can find all the reachable symbols. And if we are able to find all, so anything which is not generating or non-reachable, it becomes actually useless for us. Okay, so let's first talk about generating symbols. So generating symbols are those symbols which can derive into some terminal string. So it is a symbol that can derive into, so any symbol A that can derive into some W dash, where W dash is part of T star. Okay. Now we have a very simple iterative algorithm that does it, and the algorithm has a basis step that says that every terminal symbol is generating. Right, so every terminal symbol is generating. That's very obvious because every terminal symbol can generate itself. So every symbol in 0 or more step, actually in 0 step, it derives itself. And usually, see, we say that a symbol doesn't derive itself because if it is a terminal, we usually derive only variables. But you can think that a single terminal symbol is basically, it is giving itself, and which is a part of T star, therefore it is a generating symbol. Now, so every terminal symbol is generating, that is a basis step. And in the inductive step, what we do? We say that if there is a production of the type A goes to alpha, where each symbol in alpha is generating so if each symbol in alpha are generating symbol, so A will also be generating symbol, right? So if every symbol in the body of a production is generating, certainly the head can use that production to generate a terminal string, right? Because if A goes to alpha and every single part of alpha, this, whatever it is, a terminal or a non-terminal, if each of the symbols are generating, you can use this production from A and then use all those symbols, and they might be generating W1, W2, W3 and all that, combining all together, A is going to generate that. So A is also generating in that sense. Now, the rule by default assumes that if alpha is epsilon, so still A is generating because A can vanish away. So you should always remember that whenever you have A goes to epsilon, by default it is also gives you that A is generating, because epsilon is also part of T star, right? So A is still generating. Now let us take a quick example to understand it. So let's take this context free grammar as goes to A, capital A, small a, B and C. Then you have capital A, going to A cap S, B D, then you have B going to A, B, A and B, and you have your C going to correct. So this is a context free grammar given to us. Now what we need to do, we need to figure it out that what exactly, which all are generating symbols and which are not, right. So as we said, in the basis step, what we will find, basis step will give that A and B, these are two terminal symbols which are generating. Now based on these, in the next step, which all will be included in the generating. So is there any production that can be used to add more generating symbols? So if you, good. So if you look at this production, yeah, if you look at this production, B goes to B, what happens? Because of B is the body of a production is generating, which is available here, so B will also be generating. So you're gonna add capital B also in the set of generating. Anything else that can be generated there? C, very good. Why this? Because when you take this, C goes to A, small b, each of the symbols are generating already in the previous known step. Therefore, C will also be a generating symbol in this step. Anything else that can be added here? As of now, no, based on the previous one, right. Now in the next iteration, when you will try to add further, now you already have the updated set where small a, small b, capital C are updating ones. Now can you add anything else in this iteration? Okay. Samajh back, actually in the first step we are looking at the set which was already defined in the basis. So that's why we did not include the S at that point of time. So any point of time when in any iteration, ith iteration when you are working, we are looking at the I minus 1th iteration result. Right. Now you're gonna include S here, rightly said that S goes to A, B, C. We know that A is already generating in the first iteration, B is also generating in the first iteration, C is also generating in the first iteration. So S is also going to be a generating symbol. Now what about A? Now can A be added in this one only? No, because we know we did not know that whether S was a generating or D was a generating. So we cannot define it. So therefore in the third step, again you gonna find out A, B, B, C, S, and now A will be added. The reason being A goes to small a S, and S was known to be generating in the second iteration. In the third iteration you are able to add A. What about D? So after this third iteration we are not able to add any new generating symbols. So we are going to terminate at this point of time our algorithm, and we will say that we have already found all the generating symbols. Now there is an inductive proof given in the book I recommend all of you to go back and read. I am not going to talk about the proofs due to limitation of time, but the proof, inductive proof of all these iterative algorithms are very trivial, which says that this algorithm that we discussed previously, it finds all generating symbols. It doesn't miss any. So there is a proof of that, and if doesn't miss any, so what all symbols were available there? So we had a variable set of S, A, B, C, D, and we have a terminal set of A, B. Out of these 7 symbols, we already found that 6 of them are generating. So the only non-generating symbol is D. Correct? So how to tackle when we find a non-generating symbol? It is very simple. You have to delete all the productions which contain this non-generating symbol. So basically you're gonna delete all the productions. So removal of this type of useless symbol is that you're gonna delete all the productions where this useless symbol is appeared either in the head or in the body. So you're gonna delete this, you're gonna delete this one, you're gonna delete this one, and your final grammar after deletion of this non-generating symbol will be this one. S goes to this, A goes to small a capital A, capital S, B goes to A, B, A and B, and C goes to A, B, B. Right? That's all. Because these are the symbols that can generate any terminal string. D can never generate any terminal string, so we should never be having it in our context free grammar, because whenever we are talking about any string part of the language, D will never help us. Simple. Okay. So I hope it is clear for generating, finding generating symbols, and then how to tackle if a symbol is non-generating. Now let's talk about the second one, which is called the reachable symbols, right? So the second one is reachable symbols. Again, we have a iterative algorithm here to find reachable symbols, and if any symbol is not reachable, what we gonna do? We gonna just again handle it in the same way. We declare it as a useless symbol and we gonna delete it. Now, what is the algorithm for finding all the reachable symbols? Again, we have a iterative algorithm. So here the basis says that S is a reachable symbol. Right, the start symbol is definitely reachable to itself. It's like when you are starting finding the reachable states from the in the DFA from a start state. So start state is reachable to itself with epsilon move or something like that. Right. Now in the inductive step, the induction will say is that suppose we have discovered that there is a variable A which is reachable. So I am saying that suppose A is reachable, right, and there is a production A goes to alpha, then all symbols of alpha will be marked as reachable. Right. So inductive step is very similar, that if you are working in a graph or DFA, that if any state is known to be reachable from the start state, so which all places you can go from there will also become reachable from the start state, right? So it is in the same way we are defining. Now let's take another example to find out all the reachable symbols and which are not reachable. So let's take the previous example only. So if we write again the initial grammar, let me quickly write. Okay, so this is a context free grammar given to you. Now you have to find out all the reachable symbols. So again, the basis step gives you what? That S is reachable. Correct? S is reachable. In the first iteration, what all will be reachable? In the first iteration, because there is a production of S goes to A, so if I am going to consider this production first, what it is going to give me? It is going to give me small a, capital A. If I take the second production, it is going to give me small a, sorry, small a is already considered here. So capital B, capital C, and yeah, S is already there, right, from the previous one. So A, B, C, small a. Definitely you are never going to use a terminal for further derivation, but you should find what is reachable and what is not, right, because here we are more focused on the variables due to its definition if variable is derived into production. Now in the second step, now because A, B, C both are all of them are reachable, so using all the productions, A and S is already reachable, B and D. Now because of this production, we gonna add further two new symbols in the reachable part, which is B and D. Anything else? Because of A, reachability of A in the previous iteration, no. Because of the reachability of B, we are adding A, B, B, so nothing new. Because of the reachability of C, A, B, B, D, D, and because of the reachability of, oh, D was not reachable. Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all 7 symbols are reachable, correct? All 7 symbols are reachable. So in the second step itself, you are able to add these two. So here we added this, in the next iteration we added this, further we cannot add because everything is reachable, so done. So even no symbols are deleted and everything is useful in terms of reachability. But if you remember from the previous one, although D is a reachable symbol, but it is not useful in terms of generating. So therefore what we need to do, we need to perform both these things together in a specific order, that we must delete all the non-reachable symbols and all the non-generating functions. But what should be the order? Can you tell? Can anyone guess which order should we follow? So again, before we move further, I think you must go back and read the proof of the iterative algorithm, that yes, it finds all the reachable symbols, and if you really do not miss any unreachable ones. Okay, so first non-reachable and then non-generating. Oh, anyway, there are two possibilities, right? Only two possibilities are there. The first one says that you eliminate non-reachable and then you eliminate non-generating. The other one first eliminates non-generating and then non-reachable. So how many of you really feel that order matters? In what order you do it? Or how many of you feel that order doesn't matter? You delete in any order, it's okay. Anyway you're gonna delete everything. Good. Okay, let's see. So let us take a grammar. S goes to AB, A goes to capital C, C goes to small c, and B goes to, right. And let's copy paste this grammar here also, so that we are able to perform. Okay, what is the language of this grammar? Can you guess? What is the language of this grammar? The language of this grammar is phi, because if you realize it doesn't generate anything. This starts when that's the interesting part. When S is a non-generating function, you will realize that the language of the grammar is phi. Anyway, let us say non-reachable. So, what all are reachable ones? If I have to find all the reachable symbols, what I am gonna get? So, S is reachable, A is reachable, B is reachable. In the next iteration, C is also reachable. And because of C, small c is reachable, because of B, small b is reachable. So, everything is reachable, correct? So, nothing is deleted here, everything is reachable. So, you are not deleting anything, and the same grammar comes further here in the next round for applying the non-generating, removal of non-generating. While here, if you first try to find all the generating symbols, so a small c is generating, a small b is generating. Because of a small c, capital C is generating. Because of capital C, A is generating. That's all. B is not generating and S is also not generating. You can find it out. So, because S is not generating, you can understand the language of this particular grammar is phi. Anyway, so non-generating are what? Non-generating symbols are capital S and capital B, and when you delete these, all the grammar productions with S present in head or body, what you gonna get? You gonna get A goes to capital C and capital C goes to small c. That's all. While here you got the whole grammar again. You got everything here which was present previously. Now, when again you try to find the generating, same results that you acquired here will come here. The generating will be small c, small b, capital C, capital A, and when you find the non-generating, S and B, and finally once you discard the non-generating ones, your grammar is A goes to C and C goes to C. While here, if you try to find in this updated grammar what is reachable, now S itself is not present here, therefore there is no state reachable. So, reachable state symbols are phi, and therefore unreachable if you are talking about. So, every symbol is actually unreachable in this grammar, whether it is A, C or small c, and therefore when you are removing all the unreachable symbols, you gonna get the production set as phi, while here the production set was comprising of this. So, now tell me which one is the correct order. Right, so it is always important that you delete. Although see here what you are seeing in the left, although it cannot generate anything, but finally your production has not discarded all the useless symbols. So therefore it is always very important that first you gonna delete the non-generating and then non-reachable whenever you are talking about removal of useless symbols. So always remember, first non-generating and then non-reachable, not vice versa, right? Okay, so this was the part of removing the useless symbols. If you have already, so this is one step of removing the useless symbols. Any question on this? Okay, so once you remove all the useless symbols, still the grammar remains same, because whatever the productions you have discarded, it was not able to generate any terminal string. So once you deleted all these productions, you did not alter the language. I think the intuition is very much trivial, that whatever the productions you discarded, it can never help you derive any terminal string, because either it was not reachable from the start state or it was never going to derive any terminal string from it. So therefore, and there is a proof for it. So you must go and read that proof, the well written mathematical proof. Next that we gonna understand is the second pre-processing step that we were talking about, elimination of upsilon productions. Okay, so while designing upsilon productions, we might have realized that upsilon productions are very essential for designing a context free grammar, because it helps the symbol vanish away in the derivation or something like that. But in reality, it is not essential. It can be managed except in one case, that when upsilon is part of the language, then you definitely require a upsilon production for that. But apart from that, if there is any non-empty string in the language, that doesn't necessarily require upsilon production in the context free grammar, right? So elimination of upsilon productions from a grammar can be done, but it will only affect for the empty string. So the method that we're gonna talk about of elimination of upsilon production, what it does, it actually gives you a fresh grammar L dash, which is actually L minus upsilon. So after conversion, after removal of upsilon production, if upsilon was part of the previous language, it is no more because of removal of all upsilon productions. Rest of all the strings which were non-empty will still be preserved, and there is a whole proof of it. You should go back and read, but we will discuss just the method of removing upsilon productions. So first of all, what is a upsilon production? So any production where the body is just upsilon is called upsilon production, right? So this is a upsilon production, and to eliminate it, we have to calculate something called nullable variables. So what is a nullable variable? A variable A is called nullable variable if in 0 or more steps you are able to derive upsilon from it, right? So it might be just a direct production from A to epsilon, or in 0 or more steps you are able to derive into epsilon. So nullable is something that it can generate epsilon after 0 or more steps of derivation. I think the definition is very clear. Anyone has any doubt in the definition of nullable variable? So a variable which can derive epsilon in 0 or more steps, simple. Now how we gonna handle once we remove this variable is a different case, but let us understand an iterative algorithm to find all nullable variables. So the basis step again, if you have to understand that if there is a production given A goes to epsilon, then A is nullable. Simple. Now the induction says that if there is a production from B goes to C1, C2 up to some Ck, where each Ci is nullable, then B is also nullable. And that is very trivial, right, the inductive step, because suppose that there is this, so when you are constructing a pass tree from B and it gives you all these C1, C2, C3 up to Ck, right, because of this production, and each of them in their particular pass tree, they are nullable. That means they can just generate epsilon, 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 epsilon. So B can also derive just epsilon, because if you take the yield of this pass tree, it is only epsilon, right. So we are using that as a inductive step. Now you can certainly note that when you are talking about this production for B to be nullable, none of the Ci's can be terminal, because if any Ci is a terminal string, then the whole string cannot become nullable, and therefore B cannot be nullable, right. So the body can never yield epsilon if any of the Ci's are terminal. So certainly whenever you are considering a production to find whether the head is nullable or not, the body should contain only variables, not any terminal. I think that is something very trivial concept. Now once we find all the nullable variables, how to deal with it, how to remove it. So the mechanism is very simple. See, whenever we know that there is a nullable variable like this, and if there is a production of B goes to CAD, now what are the possibilities this production can be used? The one way it can be used from here, if you try to see, it is that basically from this in 0 or more step in one direction, you can derive C alpha D by using, maybe in 0 or more steps you are defining some alpha which is not a epsilon, while in the other way if you use, you get CD, and this is because of using this possibility. So if A is nullable, certainly you can use A to derive epsilon, and then B actually turns towards CD, while if B is not deriving epsilon, it may derive something else also, right. Nullable doesn't mean it derives only epsilon. Nullable means it may derive also epsilon, but anything else also, whatever as per the other productions for that head symbol. Now, so there are two possibilities, and one says that you consider A as nullable and you vanish A, while the other says that you use A as it is apart from the epsilon one. So that's exact thing that we're gonna use while removing epsilon productions, exactly this principle. So whenever we are talking about removal of epsilon productions, the first step is determining all the nullable symbols, which we have already understood how to find. So determine all nullable symbols of a given grammar G. Once you have find out, then given P, right, which was from G, we are building a P1 which will give us a grammar G1, right? So basically we are transforming. So sorry, I should not be writing like this because we are already, so we are taking the previous productions, we are adding few more productions to it, and that becomes P1 and it results into grammar G1, right? So our G becomes G1. Now how does it happen? So what we do, so basically if you see the components of G, which is V, T, P and S, we are not touching any other component except the P for getting G1. So our G1 is still V, T, just P1 here and S. So all the other thing remains same as it is, only we are doing what? We are just changing the number of productions and all that. So how we gonna tackle it? So the method is that for every production in P, for every production in P of the type A goes to x1, x2 up to xk, right, where every xi is part of V union T. So for every production in P, you gonna take that production and suppose M of the K, right, there are total K symbols in the body. So M of the K are nullable variables. So out of K symbols, which might be terminal or variables, there are M nullable variables, I don't know how many. Then for every such productions, we add 2 to the power M production in P1. So for every production in P, we are adding 2 to the power M productions in P1, and what that will be. So 2 to the power M is actually giving, using the all combinations of nullable symbols. So you say if there are M nullable symbols, so take all as non-nullable, take one as non-nullable, and for all possibility then take possibilities of 2 nullable, possibilities of 3 nullable, and likewise. And what you will get at the end? You will get total 2 to the power M different possible versions of this production. So this production will appear in 2 to the power M versions in P1, where you have already kind of considered whether unnullable symbols takes the value epsilon or not. Right? This is the case when actually M is less than K strictly. Now the case where M is equals to K, what will happen? When M is equals to K, so out of 2 to the power M versions, one version, when you consider all the nullables taking the value epsilon, will give you A goes to epsilon. But we don't want epsilon productions in P1, right? So we just discard this by default, and therefore when M is equals to K, you just have 2 to the power M minus 1 versions of the productions included in P1. That's all. So for every production you have to do it. Let's take one example to understand how we are tackling it. So let us take S goes to A, B, C, your A goes to B, C and A, B goes to small b, A, C and epsilon, and C goes to small c, A, B and epsilon. Okay, good. So this is the grammar given to us. Let us take, so what is the first step? Determine nullable symbols, right? So what are the nullable symbols? I start with where there is a direct upsilon production, which is this and this. So therefore B and C are nullable because of the basis step. Now in the first iteration, because B and C are nullable, so in the first iteration, because of this production, you are further going to add that A is also nullable, because A goes to B and C, B is also nullable, C is also nullable, therefore A is also nullable. So you got A also. Anything else? No, right? Now in the second iteration, because B, A, C all are nullable, therefore S is also nullable. So B, C, A and S, and it is because of this production S goes to A, B, C. So because each variable present in the body is nullable, therefore S is also nullable. So we found that all the variables are nullable actually. Now to find our new grammar is still, so when we are defining up our new grammar, so G was what? G was V, T, P and S, where V is actually, if you see, it was set of S, A, B, C. T was set containing small a, small b, small c, and P is this set and S is the start symbol. Now when we are defining the new grammar, still all these sets will remain same. We are talking G1, which will be V, T, but P1, and apart from P1 it will be S only. So now let us find out what will be the value of P1, right? Now we said that how we get P1, we pick every production of the P and then we apply. So let's take the first production, S goes to, so let's take the first production as goes to A, B, C. Now this is the production in P, what we will get in P1. Now if you see, there are three symbols in the body and all three of them are nullable, therefore how many versions will you get in P1? 2 to the power 3 minus 1, not 2 to the power 3, right? Because all the symbols are here, the value is of m is equals to k. So therefore you gonna add 2 to the power m minus 1 versions, which will be first taking all 3, then taking the possibility with 2. So AB, AC, BC, then considering if B and C both take epsilon, so only A, the other possibility is B, the other possibility is C. The last possibility was considering all as epsilon, which will give you epsilon, but we are removing epsilon production, so we should not include it again. So this is the first one. What about the second production in P, which was A goes to BC? That will give you A goes to BC, B and C. The last one is not there, so 2 to the power 2 minus 1. Okay. Third production was A goes to A, and because there is no nullable in the body, so that production just gets copied as it is, right? M, the value of m is 0, so only one version of that will be copied there. Okay, fourth one, B goes to small b, AC. What you get for this? You get B goes to small b, certainly AC, and then small b. Now here if you see, there are total 3 symbols in the body, but only 2 of them are actually nullable, not all 3. So m is less than k, and therefore there will be 4 versions of this: BAC, B A, B C and just B, all 4. Because of putting both as epsilon, still we are getting small b. So that's okay. Fifth one was B goes to epsilon and we have removed it, so we don't need to consider it. So by default all the productions which were epsilon productions are removed. So the fifth one is C goes to small c A B, which will become C goes to small c A B, small c just A, small c just B and small c. Done. That's all. If you take the P1, it is a new grammar and it derives all the strings which you are able to derive from the previous grammar except this one. You cannot derive anymore the epsilon part. So the new language is just the same as the older language except the epsilon. Oh, okay. So you want to understand again the part of conversion from P to P1. Okay, let me repeat quickly. So see, we already discussed the algorithm for doing it. So what we said that when you are converting from P to P1, you have to take every production of P. Now here there is a except epsilon productions. So you don't need to consider the epsilon productions of P. So you take every production of P which is of this form. So there are K symbols which might be a terminal or non-terminal in the body. Now out of K, assume that there are M symbols which are nullable. So you just have to replace this single production to different possible versions, assuming if you take one by one and take all possible combinations of M taking the value epsilon. So here because of just one A taking epsilon, you had two possibilities, right? Whether A takes epsilon or doesn't take. The same happens here. So for each of the M there are two possibilities, whether it takes epsilon or it doesn't take. So because of that all possibilities, we get 2 to the power M versions of different productions to this production. So if there is a production in P, it becomes 2 to the power M different productions in P1 and it does the same job. The only thing is, because you are removing the epsilon production, so you are taking care that already the effect of epsilon is covered. Now because of that, there is only one case where all of them might become epsilon if M is equals to K. What do I mean? All the symbols are nullable. So in that case, you are not going to consider all the 2 to the power M versions, but only 2 to the power M minus 1 version. You're gonna discard the last version which says that all of the symbols are taking value epsilon. So that's what we are doing here. If you consider the first production as goes to ABC, as we realized all of the symbols are nullable, so there were 3 symbols and all 3 are nullable, so there will be 2 to the power 3 minus 1 versions of this production. 7 possibilities, and that's what you have. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. All these 7 possibilities are what? Basically whether A takes epsilon or not, whether B takes epsilon or not, whether C takes epsilon or not, all these except when all 3 together taking value of epsilon, it gives as goes to epsilon, so we discard that. I hope it's clear, right? So this is the way you actually discard the epsilon productions, and once we discard the epsilon productions, we lose the epsilon string if it was present in the language. So there is a whole detailed proof. You must go back and read that whenever you remove epsilon productions by this method, you lose epsilon string, empty string from the language if it was already present, and you have already seen. Now this G1 cannot generate epsilon. G1 can generate still everything else which it was generating previously, but it cannot generate. So there is a proof that says it generates everything else but not epsilon. Okay, so I leave that proof to be read by you as a homework. Next we're going to talk about elimination of unit productions, right? So this is the third step. Okay, so unit productions are what? Unit productions are that if there is a variable going to another variable. You have seen it, right? In the expression grammar, if you remember, when we tried to make it unambiguous, we said E goes to E plus T, and then T was going to T multiplied by F, and even it was going like T, and this was going like F, something like that, right? If you remember. So we were using the unit productions. So sometimes we use unit productions for our use. That's okay. But we can manage without unit productions. It is simple. One can say that, okay, if this goes to this, further if this F goes to ID, let's say, you just have to do what? You just have to write all. So you go from E plus T, okay, this T you replace with T star F, and F, this for F further you replace by ID, and you have everything in the E, right? So for E, that is what you can write. It's like going at each level and keep copying everything on the E. But that might work in many of the cases, but suppose there is a cycle, that means A goes to B, B goes to, and there is something like A goes to B and then some alpha, B goes to C and then alpha beta, and then C goes to A further and gamma. So then this cycle will never end. When you go to A goes to B, you copy paste C and beta also there, and then when you go to C, you copy A and alpha and you get A to A, and then you cannot do anything about that, and you keep running in the loop and until which level you gonna go. So just to tackle this situation of several levels of cycle and all that, the algorithm that we consider, again it's a iterative algorithm. What it does, it tries to find something called all unit pairs. So you find all the unit pairs, and how to find a unit pair? The basis step is that a symbol variable with itself is a unit pair, right? So a variable with itself is a unit pair, and then the induction is something very simple. Induction says that if you have a unit pair as AB and a production B goes to C, then AC is also a unit pair. Simple induction, right? So let's take a quick example just to understand. So let's say that you had this expression grammar that we wrote that day. E goes to T and E plus T, T goes to F and T asterisk F, F goes to I, E, and or let's say let's write a smaller version of this. So this is some identifier, it's a terminal, right? ID is a terminal I am considering here. Now let's try to find. So initially if you try to find out all the unit pairs, so already EE is a unit pair, T is a unit pair, F is a unit pair. Now because of E and T, this production which is present here, you get that okay, E is a unit pair and ET is a production, so ET also becomes a unit pair, correct? And similarly because TT is a unit pair and T goes to F, so therefore TF is also a unit pair added in the, so this is at the basis level got added, and this is in the first iteration. In the second iteration, when you go, you cannot add anything further. You realize that okay, E goes to T, ET is a unit pair and T goes to F is another production, so EF is also a unit pair. So basically, once you find this, you have already found all the unit pairs that can help you really discard all the unit productions. So the method for discarding the unit productions is something very simple. What you do, first find all the unit pairs, and then for every unit pair, right, whenever you have a unit pair AB, what you do, add all productions A to alpha in P1, the new set of production rules that you are creating when you had B goes to alpha in P. So you are adding productions A goes to alpha in P1 when you had B goes to alpha in the previous productions, and certainly this B goes to alpha is not a unit production. So you have to keep in mind that this is not a unit production. So you have to not consider the unit productions. So again, for every production B goes to alpha, you are adding it to A goes to alpha for every such pairs. So let us quickly understand how we gonna do that. So let's take the previous example only, which is on the top. So the first pair EE, if you consider, now because of E, what all productions we gonna add in P1. So this is P1 we are creating, and this is our P. So because of this E unit pair, we are not going to add E goes to T, but just we gonna add E goes to E plus T, right. Now the next one is TT. Because of TT, you will just have T goes to T asterisk F. Now because of F and F, you're gonna have F goes to ID. Okay. What about ET? Because of ET, what you're gonna have? You're gonna have all the productions from E to T, if anything we had. So this we're gonna have E goes to, what we're gonna have? E goes to, where whenever we have a T goes to alpha, we're gonna add it in A goes to alpha, right? So for whenever we had anything from T, we're gonna add it from E also. So we had T to F, but that is a unit production, so we will not add that. But T to T star F, T asterisk F, that will be added here, and that will come. Okay, good. What about T comma F? What will be added? Because of this, you're gonna get T goes to ID, and because of E comma F, you're gonna get E goes to ID. I think I'm writing it much faster, but because of we are in a hurry to finish it, but I think you get it. And the final grammar that you got out of it is actually E goes to E plus T, T asterisk F, ID, then T goes to T asterisk F and ID, and F goes to ID. This is a new grammar where unit productions are removed. Simple. Right. So finding the unit pairs and then using the unit pairs to find new productions in P1 and then just combining that together. Okay. Good. Okay, once we are done with it, now we have already understood three pre-processing steps, but the important thing is to understand in which order they should be done, and the order is the following. First, you should eliminate upsilon productions. Because when you are removing epsilon productions, you already have realized that it may give unit productions, right? When you are actually removing epsilon productions. So therefore, the removal of unit production should be done later. So unit productions, taking care of this, should be done at the second step, and the third step should be removal of useless symbols. Now, I am not telling you why we are not doing it the useless first. I think you should find an example where doing useless first will fail. But this is the order recommended, which will definitely remove all these three types of things once and for all. Okay, once we did the pre-processing, then we come to the step of finally writing our grammar into Chomsky normal form. So let us realize that after pre-processing, what is left? So suppose that there was a grammar G. What you did? You did the pre-processing and you got a G dash with new production sets and all that, right? Now this G dash, what can you say about G dash? What can you say about whatever P dash is there, the production rules in G dash? Anyone has any idea? Can you comment on the production rules in G dash? Certainly it cannot have epsilon productions, it cannot have unit productions. So what it has? And it doesn't have useless, so useless symbols are also not there. So if it doesn't have epsilon, it doesn't have unit productions. So can I say that there are only two types of productions left? The one is A goes to a terminal, right, or A goes to alpha, where basically if you see the length of alpha, it is at least 2, right, and this alpha is actually belonging to V union T star. So I am saying these two things. Does it hold? The first one is saying that either a variable goes to a single terminal, because variable cannot go to a variable, that is a unit production, but it is allowed to a variable goes to another terminal. So that may be possible, or definitely the body is of length 2. That's what we are saying by the second point. Body cannot be of length 0. We have already removed epsilon productions. So body cannot be of length 1 other than a terminal, because we have already discarded the unit productions. So the simple deduction from it is that the body is of length at least 2. So to really bring it into the Chomsky normal form, we have to do two main steps. The step 1 is, so see, the first part is already in Chomsky normal form, right? Just we have to tackle the productions of the form which are having body of length at least 2. How we gonna do that? So now if you see this body, there might be terminals and variables combined in the body. So the first part is that you have to do some arranging such that body of, so not just one body but all the bodies of the productions with length at least 2 consist only of variables. So at this stage, when we are talking about after the pre-processing, the body might contain terminal and non-terminal both, when there is a body of length at least 2. So while converting in the Chomsky normal form, the next thing is to do some arranging such that every symbol in the body becomes a variable. The second part, once it becomes all symbols as a variable, so you will have what? Every symbol in the body is a variable, so you just have bodies either with a single length of terminals, or you have bodies with only variables of length 2 or more. Right? The bodies with length 2 is by default in Chomsky normal form. So we just have to tackle the bodies of length 3 or more. So what you gonna do? You gonna break bodies with length 3 or more into a cascade fashion. So cascade of productions you're gonna create such that each body contains only 2 variables. So we just have to tackle these 2 things. First, if there is any body with at least 2 length where there are terminals and variables, we have to convert it into only variables, and then the next one is breaking the bodies with length 3 or more of variables into just 2 variables at a time. So let me give you just a quick example to do that. So suppose that there is a body like this, where you have A, B, C, D, right? And let's say there is A. Now these are 2 productions. A goes to A is already in Chomsky normal form. I don't have to worry about that. The only part is A goes to small a, B, small c, D. I have to convert this production into a production where every symbol in the body is a variable. How we gonna do that? It's very simple. Just do one thing for every terminal, create a production. So create a production like, let's say XA goes to A, XC goes to C. So these 2 productions I have created. So because there were 2 terminals in the body, so I created 2 productions where XA and XC are 2 new variables. So for every terminal, so when T is a terminal, for every terminal you create a variable XA and add it in the production. XA goes to A. You add it in the production set and then you replace wherever A was present in the body by XA. Simple. So now this production gets converted into A goes to XA, B, XC and D. Right? So every place where terminals were present in the body where there were at least 2 symbols, you are taking for every terminal there is a new variable you have created and you have added a production from that variable to this terminal. So you are replacing for every terminal to its corresponding new variable, and then once you do the replacement you get this. Now there is a problem. Sometimes people say, oh, there was already a production like this, so why don't I take A goes to A, B and XCD. Don't create XA, but that is not correct. Why it is not correct? Because once you add this becomes a recursive. It doesn't just allow you to replace the first symbol as small a. It also allows you to add other productions for A. So you should not be using the existing variables if there is already a production like that while replacing it. That's a caution you have to take. So always when you are replacing a terminal by a variable, you make sure you have added a new variable for it. Certainly if there was a production, for example, there is already a production B goes to A, but this is the only production. B doesn't derive into anything else, so you may have replaced. That's okay. But for not doing the mistakes, it is always a good idea to just replace a terminal by a new corresponding variable. So once you do the replacement, every production with a body of length 2 or more with terminals and non-terminals, you can convert into a body of only variables. Any doubt in this? Okay. So we have already sorted out the first challenge of converting. So now after this step, what we have? After this step, now either we have the production of the form A goes to A or A goes to alpha, where alpha is only part of, V star and the length of alpha is at least 2. Correct? Now, after doing this, that's what? Initially what we had that alpha was part of V union T star with length at least 2. After doing this arranging this, we got that alpha is part of now only V star, and it has been taken care. Every production is of this or this type. Now, just to reduce the size of the body, it's again a very simple cascading method. Let's say that A goes to B1, B2 up to Bk. So a production of this type where there are K symbols, right? The body is of length K. You can replace this single production by K minus 1 productions in the following way. You gonna replace this production as A goes to B1 X1, X1 goes to B2 X2, X2 goes to B3 X3, X K minus 1 goes to what it will go? BK, sorry, XK minus, let's take XK minus 2 goes to BK minus 1 and XK, no, you can just directly write BK. So a single production of body length with all K variables can be replaced by K minus 1 productions, each of length this, and in this way you are creating some K minus 2 new variables, but that's okay. At the end of the day, every production here contains only 2 variables. So this is how we convert our grammar into Chomsky normal form. After finishing this, every production is of the type A goes to A or A goes to BC. 2 variables and 1 term. Right? Everyone is okay with that? So I think you can go back and revise it how we are able to get, and whenever there is a language L, you really take this process of converting into Chomsky normal form. You get L dash minus where L dash is equals to L minus epsilon, if epsilon was present there, using this system. So that's all for today. I think you should seriously practice. You do a lot of mistake at different steps. You have to follow the order. You have to tackle the epsilon. You have to tackle every single step very carefully. So if there is any question, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, we'll end.